Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Jared Poirier, and welcome to my movie review show where I talk about movies.
What's up, my homies? Thank you for joining me once again on the movie review show. Today we're talking about a movie that I've been meaning to watch and review for a long time, and that is, of course, The Death of Stalin. And this is a movie that I really wanted to check out. I'm somebody who is very interested in Russian history, particularly this period, the Soviet period, and there are many very interesting episodes in the history of the Soviet Union, but one of particular interest is that period when Stalin died. And that's what this movie covers. And it does so in a pretty unique way. I don't think I've seen very many films like this. And yeah, let's just get into it. So this movie here was directed by Armando Iannucci. It stars Steve Buscemi, Jason Isaacs, and many others. Most of the people in this movie are British. We'll get into that later. So for the most part, I think that this movie stuck to historical facts. There's many things that happen in this movie that reflect reality. The fact that Stalin died in his dacha, the fact that he was found by the other members of his, central committee. I don't know, they have all these communist words for stuff. The fact that there was actually a riot of people trying to get in to see Stalin's funeral. And there's lots of characters in this movie that are pretty historically accurate as well. For instance, Beria, the head of what was like the KGB at the time, the kind of security service of the state. He's depicted as a real monster in this movie, and he was a monster. Actually, he was probably a lot worse than what's shown in this movie, to be honest. And yeah, stuff like Stalin's son being an alcoholic, all of that definitely having a basis in history. This movie does, of course, take some liberties with the plot not being 100% historically accurate. This is not really a historical movie. It's more of a historical comedy, I suppose. So when the plot does deviate from historically documented events, it usually does so just to make the movie funnier or to make things flow a little bit better. Alright, so now I want to talk a little bit about the acting. For the most part, the performances in this movie are really good. I did really enjoy Steve Buscemi in this movie, although I found it very, very hard to believe that he was Khrushchev. I did not see Khrushchev for a second while watching this movie. I just saw Steve Buscemi. Maybe it would have helped if they put a little mole on the boy's head, but then that might have been even more weird. So, not sure what they could have done there. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's bad casting because he was good in this role and he was very funny in this role. But yeah, not buying that he was Khrushchev. And another guy who I thought did an excellent job in this movie, this boy right here, Jason Isaacs. Isaacs is phenomenal in this movie as General Zhukov. And for the most part, I thought that the acting in this movie was pretty good, and it definitely served the tone that they were going for here. But it was a little bit weird, to be honest, and my girlfriend did point this out, and this was a bit of a hang-up for her, being Russian, was the fact that this is a Russian movie about a period in Russian history with a whole bunch of British guys speaking English with British accents. And yeah, once you notice that, I mean, that's pretty weird. But let's not dwell on that too much. It didn't ruin the movie for me. Just something interesting to note and kind of a strange choice, I guess. And since I brought up tone, let's get into the tone in this movie in a little bit more depth. I thought that this movie had a very, very interesting tone. Not a tone that I've seen pulled off that well in a lot of films. Something that might approach it as maybe like an Inglourious Bastards or something like that, that does deal with like very, very heavy subject matter. I guess even like Black Klansman might sort of fall into this category. But yeah, this movie is dealing with heavy subject matter. We have Stalin's gulag's reign of terror. We have people being torn from their beds at night and murdered in front of their families. Yet we also have a lot of jokes and a lot of this comedy is kind of playing off of the insanity and the absurdity of the Soviet regime, particularly under Stalin. And there is a lot of material to be drawn from the sort of mentality of people back then. Kind of seems like the whole society had just gone completely nuts. When we look back on what people were doing back in the Soviet Union under Stalin, the fact that he could come to your house and take your husband and shoot him in the face, and then meanwhile you'd still be like just clamoring to get to his funeral. Very strange, very, very strange period in history, but definitely one that's interesting to explore, and one where you can get some good comedic material, apparently. And I don't know, it just does kind of work. I guess the tone does work. Some people might say that it's offensive to kind of treat this level of historical tragedy with kind of a comedic tone. But in the case of the Soviet Union, since everyone was pretty nuts, and of course Stalin was pretty nuts, it works. It works in this movie. And then this is some stuff that I don't really bring up that much in my reviews, but I think that here it is really important to address the set design and costumes in this film. Both of those things are done very well. The costumes in this movie, mwah! I don't know where they got these costumes, but they look excellent, and it really helps to ground the movie in the historical period that we are in. The same thing with the sets. The work that they did on the sets is immaculate. These sets look great, and it does really help to immerse you in this historical period and helps you to feel like you are really living and experiencing these events. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this movie. Other than that, I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of Steve Buscemi, if you're a fan of this time period in history, and you want to see a pretty funny and pretty thought-provoking film based on the death of Stalin, then I would check this film out. And a last interesting thing about this movie, it was actually banned in Russia, so I guess if you're in Russia, you're not going to be able to see it, but most other places, other than maybe Russia and like Kazakhstan, you can watch Death of Stalin, and you can really enjoy yourself, and you can think a little bit about history. And isn't that something that we should all do a little more often? But anyway, guys, that's going to be about it for this video.
As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys, and I will see you guys next time.